Good morning, Metalheads Unit. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown, and today we're looking at the sixth studio album from Chelsea Wolfe entitled The Birth of Violence. Chelsea Wolfe, an American artist and a chameleon of sorts, of all things weird and dark, constantly adapting and evolving her sound, constantly injecting new ideas and new flavors into her sound. To the point now where we're 6 albums in and none of these albums really sound anything alike. I mean, they're all dark, they're all weird, but they all also pull from very different places and have different themes and ideas and soundscapes. Take, for instance, her first 2 records, The Grime and the Glow and Apocalypse, which were rooted primarily within the world of acoustic rock and dark American folk music, and then compare that to her third album, Pain is Beauty, which was much more complex in tone and style. Tonally, it was almost a concept album about idealistic love, and musically, it pulled influence from the world of experimental rock, post-punk, gothic rock, folk rock, and combined it with her singer-songwriter roots to create something incredibly intimate and weird and deranged. And then compare that to her fifth album, Hiss Spun, the record that probably is the reason most of you know about Chelsea Wolfe. And that has a lot to do with how incredibly dark, demented, and emotional that record is. It's a record that was penned in a very complicated and unhealthy period of Chelsea's life. And that is reflected in the lyrics, in the influences, in the soundscapes, in the atmosphere. The record draws even more influences from the broader spectrums of gothic and extreme music, bordering on full-blown doom and sludge metal at certain points, even avant-garde in its most obtuse moments. I think I speak for a good majority of people when I say that Hiss Spun is probably her strongest record. It's certainly my favorite from her, but all of her records are incredibly interesting and engaging. I mean, she has tackled so many different corners of dark, weird, experimental music in a relatively short amount of time, all things considered. And that brings a lot of expectations for this record, Birth of Violence, which right off the bat is evidently still a Chelsea Wolfe album through and through, but also seems to strip away a lot of the elements that have defined her within the last few years. For one, this record is nowhere near as sonically heavy as Hiss Spun, or for that matter, any of her other metal-oriented records. In fact, she seems to have stripped away as much of the metal influence as possible from her sound for this record, focusing instead on a sound that sees her going back to her singer-songwriter roots while incorporating influences from vocal R&B, from neo-folk, still a little bit of gothic rock, a little bit of dark wave and dark ambient music. But point being, it's primarily an acoustic record. And while I don't picture this being a deal breaker for longtime fans, I mean, let's be honest, we don't really come to Chelsea Wolfe looking for big fat fucking riffs, so but it is something that I think we need to point out nonetheless right off the bat, because, like I said, it's safe to say that a good majority of you are familiar with Chelsea through Hiss Spun rather than through her singer-songwriter folk rock roots. That change in sound has a lot to do with Chelsea in between album cycles getting some much needed help, isolating herself, and really focusing on more intimate, personal, and even hopeful and tranquil material, resulting in an album that probably wouldn't satisfy the vast majority of people that would watch a show called The Metal Meltdown, but for me personally, and for that matter, a good majority of Chelsea Wolfe fans, or for that matter, just fans of weird gothic music, this is such a breath of fresh air. My God, did I need this record. I mean, these last couple of weeks, I've been reviewing all these wild underground releases that have all attracted wild comments from wild people. Like, goddamn, I haven't had to filter through that many Nazi comments since the fucking Lords of Chaos review. So something like this, that was inherently much more peaceful, inherently much softer, God, it was just immediately so much nicer. The record is just so lush and dreamy, almost romantic, with its warm acoustic guitars, its beautifully sung vocals, its soft strings. Ambient riffs and synths do occasionally kick things up, give things a dark boost, but it still feels really authentic and homey almost. It's like music that I would play at the world's most fucked up campfire. Like maybe if I went camping with a bunch of fucking goth kids or something like that. It works so well in these really tender moments that you're not really thrown off guard when the album does begin to venture into some legitimately dark territory. Take, for instance, on opening track Mother Road, which starts things off really smooth and calm before eventually introducing some dark, swelling strings that add a lot of tension to the mix. Or title track Birth of Violence, which is cloaked from start to finish in a thick fog with nothing but Chelsea's vocals and some light, homey acoustics to cut through it all. I also really love how sensual a track like Deranged for Rock and Roll is, which, given the title, initially sounds like it's going to be a big raucous rock and roll riff fest. But no, Chelsea sticks with the theme, Chelsea sticks with the flow, and instead gives us something a lot smokier, a lot more atmospheric, delivering some strong, soulful rasps throughout the course of the track. Admittedly, she does sound more turned on by rock and roll than deranged for it, but that's not really a complaint either. Nor do I blame her, because rock and roll's fucking awesome. I really like the way the drums are arranged on this record. I mean, there aren't a lot of drums, period, obviously. But when they do show up, they're used in a way to almost simulate a heartbeat that pulses throughout the record. It figuratively and literally displays that Chelsea Wolfe's literal heart and soul is embedded into this music. And it's a really nice touch that I don't really see from acoustic music at all. I also really like thematically where this record is going. I mean, Chelsea is in a much healthier and happier spot in her life right now, and that's reflected through the lyrics, which are a little bit more hopeful. They're more about celebrating peace, promoting unity, celebrating the power of strong women. Take, for instance, a track like American Darkness, where Chelsea does take a minute to reflect on tragedies in the United States of America right now, but also, in a very John Lennon kind of way, still ponders if it's possible to unite and rally together and find some common ground and just enjoy life for a moment. And on a track like When Anger Turns to Honey, she turns patriarchal oppression and feminist issues into a rallying cry, into personal power, with lyrics such as, "Their anger has them under a spell, their hatred is like a poison that makes them feel again. They treat you like prey, but you're the hunter." Okay, sure, it still is inherently dark, but that little hint of optimism right at the end does so much. Not gonna lie, I did start to lose track of this thing near the very end. The constant acoustic drawling did start to become a little bit bland near literally the very end, but I do mean literally the very end. At no point did I really miss the more extreme offerings of Hiss-Spun. At no point did I really miss the more experimental and bizarre moments of Pain is Beauty. I really like seeing Chelsea Wolfe explore and diversify, as well as taking time to make sure that she's okay, getting her own shit together. And I think it just translates into a really beautiful album, so I will give this a 4 out of 5. If you're like me and you're looking for something a little bit different, if you're looking for a nice palate cleanser, if you will, to prepare for the next 2 months of high-profile metal bullshit, then honestly, you need a record like this. I needed a record like this. Do I think this record will resonate with a lot of regular people watching the Metal Meltdown? I'm not really sure. For that reason, I don't know if I can really recommend it. I mean, I'm pretty sure the same people that are requesting me to review National Socialist Black Metal and Brutal Death Metal every fucking day certainly are not going to enjoy this. But if you are open-minded and everything I've just said sounds really good to you, then by all means, sit the fuck down, light a candle, make yourself a drink, and enjoy this record. I think if you were trying to show someone not just heavy metal, but just darker music in general, this record, and for that matter, this whole band, would be a great entry point, because you still have those really beautiful clean vocals, you still have that great American songwriting at the core, plus you have all these layers, you have all this experimentation, you have the personal lyrics. There's a lot going on here that a newbie can totally get into without feeling super overwhelmed. So yeah, this album is definitely a change of pace compared to what we normally look at here on the Metal Meltdown, but in my opinion, a much needed change of pace, and a very successful and interesting change of pace. I highly recommend it, so long as you're open-minded, so long as you're not going into this thing going, "Where are my fucking riffs, man?" 4 to 5, a tender, beautifully written, composed, and performed record. Definitely check it out if you're open-minded. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.